Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Hopefully this week doesn't feel quite as long as last week. No good martinis. We've got bad, and crazy. Jim, let's start with the first bad, and this is coming to us from Axios, but others have reported on it as well. Still need more information on this, but the Biden administration last week put a hold on a shipment of U.S.-made ammunition to Israel, according to two officials that Axios talked to. And it's the first time since the October 7th attack that the U.S. has stopped a weapons shipment intended for the Israeli military. They say the incident raises serious concerns inside the Israeli government and sent officials scrambling to understand why the shipment was held. My suspicion it's because they are really trying to convince Israel not to go into Rafah. My kind of argument is, why haven't they already gone into Rafah? Nonetheless, Jim, I remember a few years ago that withholding aid that was passed by Congress was an impeachable offense. So what do you make of the Biden administration playing hardball with the ammo here?
Amazing how quickly things change once you have a D after your name. Troubling on multiple fronts. One being not just the ludicrous double standard. Second, happy Holocaust Remembrance Day, everyone. Biden has chosen to celebrate by refusing to send arms to Jews who are under attack. It's good, excellent timing on that, as always, from the Biden administration. What's more, though, in this Axios report, it says that the White House declined to comment, the Pentagon declined to comment, the U.S. State Department declined to comment, and the Israeli Prime Minister's office declined to comment. Or at least it didn't immediately respond to questions as of press time and as of this recording. So first of all, if you're going to make this decision, like, that almost indicates you're ashamed of it. It indicates that you want to, it's like, can we leak this just to Dearborn, Michigan, but not let the rest of the country know? And, you got to choose. Either the arms get there or they don't. This is a binary choice. This is one or the other. And what we have here is Joe Biden, who at the beginning of this conflict, was shortly after October 7th, Biden was going to travel to Israel, to his credit, and said, we will stand with Israel as long as it takes. And what he meant was as long as it was okay in the polls, and it wasn't going to cost him the state of Michigan. And the moment that became a risk, all of a sudden Biden had this completely different tone and completely different discussion of this. It is the same way that, Biden's like, we will stand with Ukraine as long as it takes, but don't hit any of the oil refineries in Russia. Good heavens, and don't use any of our weapons to hit Russian soil. Good heavens, we can't have any of that kind of stuff. Nothing he says really means that much. But in this particular case, look, to me, I think it's completely a wrong-headed policy. But if you're going to do it, then do it and take the lumps and come out and say, yes, we are so mad at Netanyahu. We are so mad at how Israel's prosecuted this war. We are cutting off arms shipments and we will take the lump. Oh, by the way, in this Axios report, it says President Biden is facing sharp criticism among Americans who oppose his support of Israel. We should emphasize that's a minority. That is a small minority of the public. The overwhelming majority of the public are very pro-Israel. Just saw numbers on this from Harris earlier this week. So this is, by the way, why I think the Biden administration has made this decision but isn't publicly discussing it, is that they know overall with the broader country that's a loser. And in fact, if you're Donald Trump, you could very easily say, he says he's a friend of Israel, but I would never do that sort of thing. I only cut off arms to Ukraine. This is going to be fertile territory. And it's as if the Biden administration is trying to do everything possible to chase away American Jews as supporters. For a long time, Jews were, but for some reason, there's this perception that Jews were big Republican supporters. I don't know if this goes back to Arlen Specter or stuff like that. There's always been a debate. You can always find Jewish Republicans. They've always existed. But traditionally, Jews were a heavily democratic, heavily progressive demographic. Again, broadly speaking, you can find lots of exceptions. It's as if Biden wants to chase away every Jewish supporter he's got. And we'll see how things shake. Because that's the other thing. If you're going to do this, this is a really bad time to do it. And then to try to do it in secret and somehow get the anti-Israel crowd to be supportive without trying to alienate the pro-Israel crowd. Look, you can't placate this crowd. We saw it from these campuses over the last couple of weeks. But anyway, you can tell it's a Monday some days, Greg.
Indeed. Yeah. Now Columbia's not having their big graduation. Big surprise. So if you forked over $250,000 for your kid to graduate and they weren't part of the pretend intifada there, congratulations. but you're not going to get your commencement ceremony for that price tab. Actually, Trump didn't actually withhold the weapons. He threatened to withhold the weapons, and that was good enough.
That was enough. That was enough. Start the impeachment.
That's right.
Get it rolling. Can we now say in perspective, oh, you thought that was worth impeachment? That wasn't even in the top 10 worst things Trump's ever done. Save impeachment for what it really means something.
All right, Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and more than 2 million happy customers right here in the U.S. They have everything you could possibly want in the spring planting season, like fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, houseplants, and so much more.
Whatever you're interested in, they have it for you. You can find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be shipped directly to your door in just 1 or 2 days. And along with their 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever.
That's a fantastic addition. You're going to get a great plant, but you're also going to get them helping you along. So if you don't have the greenest thumbs, and I don't, they are definitely helpful. Plus, in the very rare case where the plant doesn't arrive looking fantastic, they will make it good right away. No questions, no hassle. So this spring, Fast Growing Trees has the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And 3 Martini Lunch listeners get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code Martini at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code Martini at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code Martini. The offer is valid for a limited time, and terms and conditions may apply. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. This was quite a surprise, I have to say, when this broke on Friday. There aren't that many sane Democrats left in the House of Representatives, or the Senate for that matter, but one of them has been so sane that the Democrats have been trying to get rid of him for a while, and that's Henry Cuellar of Texas. He's now been indicted, along with his wife, allegedly for taking about $600,000 in bribes from an oil and gas company owned and controlled by the government of Azerbaijan. And so Henry and Imelda Cuellar are expected to be indicted soon, and I assume there's going to be an investigation of her shoe closet just by her being named Imelda. If you're younger, look it up. Imelda Marcos, back in the day from the Philippines, had a lot of shoes, which our taxpayers probably paid for. But nonetheless, if this is true, then he should be prosecuted. And it'd be a real shame because he's been a helpful voice on the other side of the aisle of having a quote unquote bipartisan approach to border security or a pro-life measure, because he's literally the only Democrat sometimes who will go along with Republicans on those things. But as I see this, Jim, it also reminds me, if I'm being a little more cynical, of Andy McCarthy's postulate that Democrats only prosecute Democrats to help other Democrats. And because Cuellar has not towed the line on some of these issues, it's not that he hasn't necessarily done these things, although he vigorously denies them, but there might be more likely to be prosecuted. If he runs into some issues that end his political career, the party's not going to have a real big problem with that. So hopefully that's not what's happening. But what do you make of Henry Cuellar potentially facing some serious charges here?
Yeah, I wrote about this over the weekend. I did the headline, "That Other Democrat in Congress Who's Been Indicted on Corruption Charges." And let's point out, like, you and I will cheer on Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman kicking the crap out of Bob Menendez every day and twice on Sundays. But we should point out that Menendez, back during the Obama years, was a skeptic of the Iran deal and was a little more supportive of Israel than your typical Democrat, and caused some headaches for the Obama administration. Now, I don't think that's why, like, Bob Menendez leaves a trail of slime everywhere he goes. The indictment, you know, the latest spin, by the way, from Menendez is that the reason he keeps all those gold bars and like $600,000 in cash around the house is because of intergenerational trauma of his parents coming from Cuba. Horse pucky. I'm sorry. Like, you might as well try Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs as your defense there. So, yeah, good luck with that, pal. But regarding Cuellar, there's not like there's a lot of House Democrats to choose from if you want to have a favorite House Democrat, but Cuellar was very critical of the Biden administration on the border and openly calling out Kamala Harris for not going to the border and things like that. His district is on the border there in Texas. By the standards of House Democrats, he's pro-life. Now, that doesn't mean he votes for everything. There are probably some pro-life listeners who are like, he's not that pro-life. Again, by the standards of a House Democrat, he's pro-life. And by the standards of a House Democrat, he's pro-gun and pro-Second Amendment. Now, again, a lot of this reflects the district. heavily Hispanic and kind of traditional in its values. But, again, like if, a house full of Henry Cuellars, conservatives could get a lot done. And, I think I ran the numbers. He voted with Trump 40% of the time, which made him the most pro-Trump House Democrat by a wide margin. Now, again, I could see somebody say, well, 40% isn't that much. Yeah, but by the standards of a House Democrat, that's much more pro-Trump. If there's any House Democrat, the typical conservative would say, hey, leave him in there, he's fine. It probably is Henry Cuellar. Now, if he took the bribes and the indictment sounds really bad, of course, indictments always sound really bad because the prosecutors are running them. You haven't seen the defense arguments. Maybe Henry Cuellar is completely innocent and this is all a bunch of unfortunate coincidences. I would point out, when you see somebody, whether it's in Congress or in politics, take an interest in a really obscure foreign issue, the hairs on the back of your neck should go up a little bit, because I'm thinking about it was over at Red State. They had people were blogging a lot about Indonesia, and Indonesia is not in the news. Lo and behold, there was some payola going on, right? So it's one of those things where, like, when you see a member of Congress suddenly adamantly interested in Azerbaijan, that seemed a little bit where, there's not a big Azerbaijani American community down in that Texas border district. But look, maybe it's all on the up and up, and maybe he's getting screwed. Maybe not. And if he's committed the crimes, he should do the time. That's, he'll get a fair trial just like everybody else. And for people who feel suspicious or who feel like he's a convenient target, there are. Look at the degree to which we had to pull teeth to get any indictment of the numerous, obvious, glaring, confessed crimes of Hunter Biden compared to the amount of effort that gets put into research, into investigating certain Democrats. So we'll see how this. We're also hearing the argument from Republicans like, look, George Santos got forced out. What's this guy's excuse? We can't get anything in the Senate to happen, but how about here in the House? Again, Henry Cuellar. Oh, by the way, first of all, they had a primary. He ran unopposed. I don't know if there's an easy way for Democrats to replace him as their nominee for November. This is a district that Biden won by about 9 percentage points, but you kind of wonder if, you could get the right Republican could come along and probably do pretty well. And or the fact that, Cuellar has this indictment hanging over him in bribery is probably the sort of thing that if you can't get traction on that, go home. There's, my indicted opponent really should be a problem. But then again, there's a lot of indictments going around lately.
Every sentence should start with those words. My indicted opponent says. But yeah, I mean, this is it's odd. He's been in some very tight primaries the last couple of cycles. Didn't happen this time. He was unopposed. So if this had dropped between the original primary and the runoff on the Democratic side, I would really have my antenna up for the McCarthy postulate. But Jim, you mentioned Hunter Biden. So tell me if any of what I'm about to read here about this indictment sounds vaguely familiar. According to court documents, beginning in at least December 2014 and continuing through at least November 2021, Congressman Cuellar and Imelda Cuellar allegedly accepted $600,000 in bribes from two foreign entities, an oil and gas company wholly owned and controlled by the government of Azerbaijan and a bank headquartered in Mexico City. The bribe payments were allegedly laundered pursuant to sham consulting contracts through a series of front companies and middlemen into shell companies owned by Imelda Cuellar, who performed little to no legitimate work under the contracts. The arrangement seems different than what Hunter Biden dealt with, but getting a ton of money for doing little work and maybe getting some influence down the line?
I guess the philosophy of the Department of Justice is that it is a really serious deal if your wife has these do-nothing contracts with foreign entities that are, as a way of circumventing bribery laws. But if your son's doing it, it's fine. Don't worry. No biggies. Again, free advice for the Republican candidate out there. If you're running against Cuellar, say, look, my opponent says he's a man of convictions. We'll see.
All right, Jim, we shift now from a Democrat in political turmoil to a Republican in political turmoil, although as of now not facing any criminal charges. That is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. Last Monday, we talked about the firestorm about her admitting in the forthcoming autobiography that's coming out tomorrow that she killed her dog because of a variety of reasons. First, it was because the dog didn't train well. Then it was attacking other animals, potentially nipping at people. Nonetheless, whatever explanation she gave throughout the week only made the situation worse, not better. Then she decided, in all her political wisdom, to go on a Sunday morning talk show to try to push her book. And She got a lot of pushback on a lot of different things. So we're going to have 2 clips here. This is on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. And let's start with her claim in the book, which, as you've pointed out, Jim, is also voiced by her in the audiobook, about her meeting Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator. And here's that awkward part of the conversation.
Quote, I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all. Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage. And I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. So I'm glad that this book is being released in a couple of days and that those edits will be in place and that people will have the updated version.
So you did not meet with Kim Jong-un. That's what you're saying.
I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. I think I've talked extensively in this book about my time serving in Congress, my time as governor, before governor, some of the travels that I've had. I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that. This anecdote shouldn't have been in the book, and as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that was adjusted.
All right, we'll get to the dogs in just a second, but I think we need to spend a little bit of time on this one. So, first of all, her consultant situation is not good. She was basically given an answer. Okay, this is probably going to come up because this story had percolated before this interview. Just say this, and then they'll move on to something else. So she basically spits out the exact same answer both times she's asked about it. So, Jim, I'm not sure whether she never met with the North Korean dictator at all, whether she got the wrong dictator, it was really Kim Jong-il, and she can't even admit that slight little deal, or it did happen, but she realizes it's probably not good to admit it because it was kind of off book. I don't know why she's taking this very vague tack in answering this question, but it only makes her look worse.
Yeah, look, that's a yes or no question. And we got about 1,000 words, and none of those words were yes or no.
Right.
Let's point out, if Kim Jong-un or if any ruling figure in North Korea met with a member of the House at any point in the last couple of years, that'd be pretty unusual. That you don't get a lot of foreign codels going to North Korea. Right. We know that Trump, like Pompeo, has when he was Secretary of State, and there were certain U.S. figures. There's no reason to think Kristi Noem was one of them. And so he's like, well, I'm not going to talk about this. Wait a minute, you brought this up in your own book. How it's not like Margaret Brennan. She's pulling this stuff. No, you put this in your book, and which is as soon as this was brought to your wait, who brought this to your attention? It's your book. And as you said, well, as soon as it was, you read the audiobook version. At some point, you're like, and then when I met with Kim Jong-un, if you didn't meet with Kim Jong-un, didn't that seem a little weird to you? Wouldn't you want to say, hey, I don't remember that. Do I have amnesia? Do I, almost everybody in politics or a whole bunch of celebrities use ghostwriters. I think probably like I wrote my own book is the politician equivalent of I do my own stunts for Hollywood actors, But there are some people who write their own. Often, there's nothing inherently wrong with having a ghostwriter to, take your anecdotes and kind of streamline it. It's basically like having another editor. But that having been said, traditionally you read what the ghostwriter has written on your behalf. And it's kind of bad to not read what the ghostwriter has written. And even if you did, during the reading of the audiobook, you figure at some point, did I meet with Kim Jong-un? You think that would jump out there. As I mentioned in today's Morning Jolt, you talk about things being taken out. The common complaint is I have taken out of context. Keyshawn Johnson, 1997, New York Jets wide receiver, loudmouth, very talented, rips into all his teammates in a autobiography written after his rookie year in the NFL. Rips into Wayne Corbett, says Neil O'Donnell exaggerated an injury to get does all this kind of stuff. And afterwards, Keyshawn Johnson tells his teammates, I was taken out of context. It's your book! Then somebody else reminded me, apparently Charles Barkley also insisted that he was misquoted in his own autobiography. No, don't you guys read? I'm just absolutely befuddled by this. And so my suspicion is that, first, one possibility is that she met with somebody and thought this was Kim Jong-un and nobody bothered to correct her. Also, the possibility this was some South Korean official and she, years later is misremembered. I don't know. It's exceptionally hard to believe. Also, she said she had canceled a meeting with the French president And the office of the French president said, we have absolutely no record of ever attempting to meet with the governor of South Dakota. Trust us, like French president comes in, maybe they're meeting the Speaker of the House, meeting the president, secretary. There are certain high level. Oh, I got to meet with the South Dakota governor. That does not come up very often. So it's certainly something she just made up stories, exaggerating her foreign policy experience in a book that is pretty transparently a audition for the vice presidency to be Trump's running mate, and she's just immolated it. But wait, there's more.
Oh yes. Crashed and burned. It's bad enough if she just said she met with them, and she's like, I remember staring down the tyrant. I'm like, apparently you don't. But
no,
I would like some equal time for every time Biden comes up with a total cockamamie story.
Fair. Yeah. I was talking to Mitterrand just the other day. He and Helmut Kohl, we were all in New Guinea fleeing these cannibals, and this is back when I was a truck driver.
Exactly.
And then I was arrested meeting JFK. No, Martin Luther King. Shook his hand just the other day. Exactly. Biden does some of his best foreign policy meetings with a Ouija board.
Anyway, part 2 of Kristi Noem. Back to the dogs. Because in addition to talking about taking the life of her own dog, she said if she makes it to the White House, she would not have Biden's dogs there, which obviously you would not, because he wouldn't be there anymore. But nonetheless, she apparently addressed this in the book as well. Margaret Brennan.
You talk multiple times about it. In fact, at the end of the book, you say the very first thing you would do if you got to the White House that was different from Joe Biden is you'd make sure Joe Biden's dog was nowhere on the grounds. Commander, say hello to Cricket. Are you doing this to try to look tough? Do you still think that you have a shot at being a VP?
Well, number one, Joe Biden's dog has attacked 24 Secret Service people. So how many people is enough people to be attacked and dangerously hurt before you make a decision on a dog and what to do with it?
Well, he's not living at the White House
That's
anymore.
a question that the president should be held accountable to.
You're saying he should be shot?
That's what the president should be accountable to, is what is the number? And I would say about Republicans criticizing me, these are the same Republicans that criticized me during COVID. They've criticized me when I've made other decisions in South Dakota to protect my state.
All right. First of all, and this will be a little bit controversial, but there are a lot of communities around the country where if your dog bites anybody, they force you to put the dog down. So mauling a bunch of Secret Service agents, meriting putting him down, would not be the biggest surprise in the world, although I would agree with most of the people who say that's really the fault of the owner rather than the dog, although we don't put down the owners for that at this point.
By the way, when she says so he should be shot, we should clarify the dog should be shot, not President Biden. For anyone at the Secret Service listening, look, I know he gets nicknamed Old Yeller because of the State of the Union address, but no one is saying President Biden should be taken out back and shot. Come on.
Very important clarification.
Not even the vice president.
So in addition to not cleaning up the whole Cricket situation, I don't know if it's the immediate instinct, but the pretty quick instinct to, the Republicans who are criticizing me about this, they're always in my face. They're not real. They're not real conservatives or whatever she's trying to say there about COVID policy and everything else. It's like, no, pretty much everybody disagrees with you on this issue. So good luck
Newt
with that
Gingrich
spin.
was not the guy tearing into you for being too soft on COVID restrictions. That's it. Greg, can I point out, Commander, say hello to Cricket. First of all, she loves this anecdote. She really thought the dog killing was going to go boffo, and everybody was going to love this. Second of all, is she trying to do Die Hard with a Vengeance? Say hello to your brother for me.
Good question.
Right, like this feels like this movie-esque, in your face. Say hello to Cricket. Like, first of all, I think, now, if you want to say Biden escaped getting much grief for the circumstance with both Major and both of them were biters, right?
Yeah.
I know people who had German Shepherds had no problem with them, but probably the White House, I mean, the building is basically a museum, right? It's not big and spacious. I don't know how much they let the dog go out and run and all that stuff. I'm not a dog owner at this point in my life. I've been a dog owner in the past. My understanding is, the bigger the dog, the more they need space. They need to get their energy out. They have all of this desire. And also, most dogs, they know their family. They know the people who are good and who they consider to be part of the household, part of their pack. And then there are strangers. And we've all seen it. The Amazon delivery guy, they go crazy because, there's a stranger in my territory. I should do something, So eventually, with training, you can get a dog to not do that. But the White House is always going to have lots of people coming and going. Major and commander, we're going to smell. It's a new person. This person might be a threat and reacting all the time. I do think that Biden deserved more criticism. You don't just have to take it from me. Other folks who'd written for the Washington Post had the same observation. But I pointed out, how many times would you need to see the president's dog biting and attacking someone before you're like, I think we really have a problem here, and I think this is not a good spot for this dog to be living? Because 25 sounds like a lot. I'd like to think that after the first dozen, you'd be like, maybe it's time for this dog to non-metaphorically visit the farm. But to go off and live in some space that, I don't know whether this space at Camp David, I don't know whether one of, Biden's beach houses in Delaware, like, you just could look at it and say, look, the White House is probably not a great spot for a big dog that needs a lot of activity. And certainly Biden does not look like the kind of guy who can go out and run around with them and wrestle with them on the ground and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to say Biden deserved more criticism, fine, but that doesn't really make your actions any different or any better, Kristi Noem. And pledging, I'll kill the president. It's basically the little, Wicked Witch of the West vibe. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. This bizarre. I mean, she's locking up the Cruella de Vil vote, but beyond that, I don't think it's helping her either in South Dakota or as potential as Trump's running mate.
Well, the point of the book, the point of the interviews was to basically audition for VP. And as you and I said, there are plenty of reasons Kristi Noem shouldn't be the number 2 spot on the Republican ticket. So, again, unlike cricket, bullet dodged.
I know somebody whose dog is named Bullet.
Jim, on that note, have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hell of a start to the week, Greg. See you tomorrow.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Do be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Monday and join us again Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.